So I do believe we are now live from New York. No, that's not right. Live from our various Zoom backgrounds. Welcome to our third November 1st Write-Together-a-Thon live stream. We are so excited to have you here. We're so excited to do some writing together. My name is Sarah Mackey. I'm the Director of Community Engagement here at NaNoWriMo. I am working on my novel about a woman who's sort of having a midlife crisis, except I feel like women never get described as having midlife crises. But her midlife quest to figure out who she really is when everything she defined herself by sort of disappeared overnight. And I'm excited to have some writing time today because I have not done any of it yet. So I'm excited to get here and get writing with everybody. For the next 40 or so minutes, we're going to first get a behind the scenes look at our guest author's writing process. And then we're going to spend the rest of that time writing all together. You can participate by chatting in the live chat. I see lots of you already doing that. If you want to pop in and say hi and share where you're joining us from today, we would love to hear about that. And to get started, I'm excited to introduce our special guest author. I am extra excited that I get to introduce Jasmine because Jasmine and I have been friends for like 15 years at this point, or for a really long time. I know. Let's not get too far down that path. But we're here in our professional capacity today, so I'm gonna do the professional version of this. Jasmine Guillory is a New York Times bestselling author of novels including The Wedding Date, the Reese's Book Club selection The Proposal, and her most recent book, Drunk on Love. Her work has appeared in the Wall Street Journal, Cosmopolitan, Bon Appetit, and Time, and she is a frequent book contributor on The Today Show. She lives in Oakland, California. I also brought along my copies of the only two of Jasmine's books that I have on hand right now because I've lent out all the rest of them because Jasmine always has the best covers and I feel like everybody should appreciate them, especially this one because it's sparkly.
Yeah, that one's sparkly. I love that. Yeah.
I feel like not enough book covers are sparkly.
Yeah.
And then also this one, which I love because this is part of the Meant to Be series, which is modern takes on Disney movies, which is like when Jasmine texted me to tell me she was doing this, I was very excited. Anyway, welcome, Jasmine. We're so excited to write with you today. Before we get started, we were hoping you could give us a behind the scenes look into your writing process. Where do you write? Do you have any rituals that are part of your writing process? And what does a normal writing session look like for you both now and also, I think maybe of particular interest to people who are participating in NaNoWriMo, when you were fitting it in sort of as of margins, when you had a pretty demanding full-time day job. We've got a lot of first-time writers with us, and I'm sure they would love to hear about what that looks like for you.
So when I wrote The Wedding Date, I started it on April 1st as part of the April NaNoWriMo, and on April 1st, 2015. And I was working full time then. And so I would bring my laptop to work with me. I would go to the Starbucks across the street from work for like 30, 45 minutes at lunchtime, right then, and then after work, go home, eat dinner, and then write more. So that was basically sort of my writing time. And I ended up like throughout, I had a full-time job while I wrote my first 3 books. And when it wasn't NaNoWriMo time, I did not like work also at lunchtime and after work. I tried to balance a little bit more, but I'm more of an evening person than a morning person. So I would usually go home from work, like take a little break, eat dinner, and then sit down and write for anywhere from an hour to 2 hours. I think one of the things that NaNoWriMo really helped me with is like, when I sit down for a writing session, I get a bunch of words out at once. And so I would tend to like write about 1,000 words in an hour. And so I would write anywhere from, 30 minutes to 2 hours, depending on what was going on. Now I'm a full-time writer. I have gotten older, and so I can't write as late at night as I used to. Also, I have a puppy, so she exhausts me. So now what I usually do is we go for a walk in the morning. She's tired when we get home. I leave the house and go write somewhere for like anywhere from usually like, again, maybe closer to 2 hours or so. And then I come home and then I usually do a little bit more at night after she's gone to sleep. Often, actually, lately, I will like just take a notebook with me when I leave the house and write by hand. And then later at night, I will type it all up and then usually keep writing a little bit more. But it's often helpful for me in those like evening writing sessions when I'm a little bit tired to like start off by just typing something I wrote earlier today. Because in the typing up, I'm always like editing and changing things and thinking about what I was doing. And then it's, a lot easier to add on another, a few hundred, 500, even sometimes 1,000 words after I've done that, because sort of the wheels are already turning. So that's what it's been like over the past few months. But again, I think one thing that I have really realized is writing patterns change as we, sort of move throughout this writing life. And so that's what's been working for me lately, but we'll see what happens in a few months.
I feel like the puppy too. Like, it's like you can't predict what's going to be.
Exactly. Right.
The factor of the puppy is she becomes slightly less puppy-like.
Yes.
And although I feel like her personality, she's just going to be like, she's never going to be a small personality.
She's not, no, she is a big personality, but she does like have a more predictable sleep schedule now. So I know that like from around, 11:30 to like at least 2 or so, she's kind of tired. So then she will be like, she's right now sleeping at my feet. Perfect. And then I can, work at this time.
I love that every single thing you just said about this is equally applicable to people with small children.
Yeah,
it's just exactly. It's basically like perfect parallel. Doesn't matter. No notes. I do not have a dog. I do have. I don't
children. Like making that comparison.
No, I don't make that comparison though.
Children are like my dog, but
no, I have children and not a dog, so I feel like I can say that is exactly what it was like when my kids were really small. They're now school age, so it's like a little less intensely working around their schedules. But yeah, no, those are everything you just said. I feel like, except I guess you can't leave your children at home by themselves while you go work in a coffee shop. Maybe.
Yes.
I think that's frowned on.
Yeah. You can't just stick them in a crate and then leave the house.
Yeah. I think there are laws about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we could talk about this all day. But I think what we are really here for today is to sit down and write together. Something that you said that is so true for me is like starting to type up what you wrote earlier or whatever, or like for me, I have to trick myself into starting to write.
Oh my gosh, every single time.
It's every single one of my NaNoWriMo novels, I think begins, like my very first draft begins with like, oh my God, I'm starting, it's midnight. What am I doing? What am I doing? Why did I decide this was a good idea? Okay, here's the song that's playing. I just like start talking to myself. And it's almost like the physical act of typing tricks me into being like, okay, no, this is going to be okay. You can write fiction.
Completely.
So we are going to spend, I think we're going to do a 25-minute sprint, if that feels good to people. And how a word sprint works, if you're not familiar with it, is you're setting a goal, you're setting a timer, and you are letting go of that internal editor or that internal critic that's like, oh, this isn't very good. Truly, if you need to start by saying, I'm in a live stream with NaNoWriMo, and I am excited to go afterwards and look at pictures of Jasmine's puppy on her Instagram. But right now I'm going to start writing my novel because that's what we're here for. Like, just start to type. And so for 25 minutes, we're going to just
having this NaNoWriMo mentality really helps me in a first draft. Because like even a few days ago, I was like searching for a word in my head and I couldn't remember it. And that's the kind of thing that can like lead you in a spiral that can last forever. And I just like put in parentheses, like, it's not this word, but, and then a just word jumble of like what I was in my mind, and then just moved on. And it'll come to me eventually, but it was not the time to like do that.
Your train of thought. Yeah, I do that. And I always want to call my mom and be like, here are the 15 words. That's not exactly what I mean.
Yes.
What's the word I actually want? She always knows, but then, then I'm going to have another 20-minute conversation with my mother. I'm like, no, there's no time. Keep going. Call her later. Okay. So I am going to set us a timer and we are going to write together for 25 minutes. And to aid us in the, oh no, what am I going to write about sort of panic that can be very easy to get caught up in, Jasmine is going to share a writing prompt with us. And it is a totally optional writing prompt. If it doesn't fit into your story or it doesn't speak to you, there's no obligation to use it. It is just meant as a helpful boost if you are stuck on what to write about. And Jasmine has prepared a very appropriate one if you have ever read any of Jasmine's books.
Yes, write about a meal, write about some characters eating something together or separately, or them thinking about something that they ate earlier that day.
And if you haven't read Jasmine's books, and you should, and I'm not just saying that because she's my friend, they're genuinely wonderful books. You should know that you should never read a Jasmine Guillory book without a snack on hand, because the food in her books is always amazing.
I have some snacks right next to me right now. While we write.
All right. Are we ready? Everybody ready? All right, I got my timer. I think I did it right. I'm going to start the timer. We're going to stay on screen to have that visual association of like, oh, everybody's writing. It's the positive peer pressure. And we're going to go for 25 minutes, which will bring us to 36. 36 on the hour. Wow, that was way harder than math should have been. 36 on the hour, unless you're in Newfoundland, in which case you're on the half hour. But we'll go 25 minutes and we will see everybody back here with however we did with that writing. All right. Okay. See you on the other side. That is time. I am always shocked. I have been doing NaNoWriMo since 2002. And I am always shocked every time I sit down and start writing. And I'm like, oh, right, writing. What a fun thing to do. Oh, you're still muted.
Thank you. Yes. No, me too. It's like, oh, this is fun. I like this.
Yeah, I do this because
there's like, I mean, always at the beginning, there's a like, how am I? What are words?
What are words?
And that, yeah, no, I stopped halfway through a sentence. Because yeah, I got into what I was working on.
I truly I was like, oh, I know I'm never very productive in these, like organizing, making sure I have everything in the right places and watching the clock and stuff like that. But I wrote like 700 words, just like sitting here and thinking about what I want to write about. And it was like, oh, rad, I like this story idea a lot. Yeah. I do need to figure out what my main character's name is because I don't like her name. If you want to share your word count in the chat, feel free. But I also want to NaNoWriMo has this 50,000 word goal that's very big. And I'm a big believer in set big goals. You never know what's going to happen. But I'm also a sort of contradictory believer in the idea that all words are good words and the total doesn't actually matter. So maybe we can embrace the idea that those two things can exist simultaneously. And
I also feel like sometimes it's intimidating to hear how many words that other people have written, because you're like, oh my God, that person wrote 4,000 words today. I wrote 600 words today. I am never going to make this. And no, you wrote 600 words. Those are great. Just keep going.
And it's so, I'm a very fast writer. And I was an ML for 10 years. For those of you who don't know about MLs, municipal liaisons are local volunteers who arrange writing events in regions all over the world. And I always hesitated to share my word count because I am genuinely, when I get going, quite a fast writer. But it doesn't matter. I am a fast writer, but my attention span is terrible. So I have to write fast because I'm cramming in, all of my writing into these tiny little spaces where I actually sit down to do it. And figuring out what that looks like for you and what works well for you. Everybody's different. Some people need the space to breathe to get their words done. And some people just have to do that, cramming it into the 25 minutes when they're in a word sprint with somebody. You just figure out what works for you. And I see someone in the chat saying that it's really encouraging to hear a published author say, what are words? Yeah. But this is now our third one of these today. And what's been really striking is it's different for everybody that we've had in these live streams. And it's so nice to hear that there's not one way to do this. There's not a right way to do it. There's figuring out what works for you. And you can hear people in the chat talking about, how they were surprised to find out how much they wrote in that sort of structured short amount of time. And it's really, that's what I love about NaNoWriMo, is it gives you that chance to figure out what works for you. And there's so many different ways you can do it. Maybe you're going to join more of these types of things. Maybe you're going to go to in-person write-ins. Maybe you're going to go to some of the Discord write-ins that regions are holding. There's just so many different ways you can do it. And I love that. I just love the idea that you can find things that you didn't know were going to work for you by finding other writers to write with. And that, I think, is what's so great about NaNoWriMo.
I agree.
So we are going to wrap things up, I think, pretty close here. But if, Jasmine, do you have any final thoughts you want to share with people as they crest towards the end of day one here in NaNoWriMo? We were saying in a meeting earlier, the day one of NaNoWriMo is actually 48 hours long because of time zones. And so I always, it's we're 2/3 of the way into the 48 hours of Nova. It's all very timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly.
I think one of the things that I really appreciate about NaNoWriMo, and it's something that I there's many things that I learned through doing NaNoWriMo that I still keep in my writing practice. But I think one of them is just sometimes when you sit down to write, it feels like you did so little. But having looking back over your word count from day to day to day, you can look back, on November 10th, if you write 1,000 words every day, you look back, you've written 10,000 words. If you've written 2,000 words, you've written 20, and so that is really helpful, because even on those days where it feels like I didn't get much writing done. I am a bad writer, also therefore a bad person. Like, you know how we can all spiral. At least I know I can. But it really helps to like look back and look at all of what I have accomplished. And I think that's one thing that NaNoWriMo is great for. So I'm cheering away for everybody who is writing today. And that's all.
Yeah, I think there's just, you can't say it enough, right? It adds up. Every little bit adds up. And like, if you keep that momentum going, the momentum is really what I find most effective about NaNoWriMo is like, I don't write that much the rest of the year. I just don't prioritize it. I wish that I would, but I don't. And NaNoWriMo is when I'm like, no, I'm going to do this. And part of what helps me a lot with that is what I said earlier is, you know, positive peer pressure. When people know you're doing it. One of the other NaNoWriMo staff and I, we are super competitive with each other when we compete in NaNoWriMo. And we were like, both really heavily trying to beat each other, but we were also ludicrously motivated by like the daily streak badges that you can get on the NaNoWriMo website. And we were like, we like worked on putting these together. We know exactly what they do. And yet we were like, oh, I want to get my streak badge. And I'm like, I'm being tricked by my own systems here. But finding those buddies or finding those people that you can have that accountability with, like Jasmine and I will text each other and like, I have to write this, tell me. Yeah, I always get these texts from Jasmine when she's got a deadline that's like, okay, tell me something bad that you're going to make me do if I don't do this thing that I say I have to do. Finding those buddies, I think, is what makes NaNoWriMo really great. And maybe you'll find them in your local region. Look for those on the NaNoWriMo website. Maybe you'll find them in other NaNoWriMo HQ events like this one. We do have all of our virtual events listed on the website. We have 2 more of these happening today. We've also got some live streams this weekend as part of donation weekend. And then tomorrow, I believe, is when the global write-in crawl begins, which is a Discord hosted ML run, volunteer run, global write-in hop, where every 2 hours, I think there's a new host. And so it's hosted by a different region every 2 hours, and you like learn all the traditions from all the different regions around the world. It's so fun. I love it so much. I'm totally going to go and hang out in the Discord over the course of the weekend. So there's just so many different ways that NaNoWriMo can give you that support and that accountability that makes such a big difference in both how productive you can be and how much fun it can be to be productive. So I know we've got some of those links to all of those things that I talked about in the chat here, but also all listed on NaNoWriMo.org. And I would also encourage everybody who wrote today to go and update your word count on the NaNoWriMo website, because it is also very satisfying to see your graph inch its way up. And the final thing I will mention is you can find Jasmine on Instagram at instagram.com/JasminePics, which is where you will find many excellent puppy photos and videos of Rosie, the perpetual motion machine. And you can find all the information about her books
in the corner, but
perpetual motion machine until she's not. That's how it works, right? That's how physics works.
Yeah.
Or you can find out more about her books at JasmineGuillory.com. And thank you, everybody, so much for joining us today. This was so fun. Thank you, Jasmine, for joining us today. This was really fun.
Thank you. I had a great time, and I wrote some words. Awesome.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
I know. We found out how to write.
Exactly.
Awesome. Thanks so much, everybody.
Bye.